With the meeting today. So thank you, Lori and Brandy from the University of Cincinnati for doing this for us today. We look forward to hearing what you have to share, and I'm going to turn it over to you at this point. So thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Carrie. We really appreciate it. Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here with you today. My name is Lori Bishop-Ley, and I'm the Assistant Director in the Student Wellness Center at the University of Cincinnati.
And hi, everybody. My name is Brandy Reeves, and I am the Director in the Student Wellness Center at the University of Cincinnati.
We're really excited to talk to you today about some strategies that we have found to be successful in marketing general wellness, but specifically gender-based violence prevention to our campus. Thanks, Brandy. So a little background about the Student Wellness Center. We actually were established at UC in the early to mid 90s. So we have been a cornerstone of UC student life for many years. Our goal is to empower students to make informed decisions regarding their health and wellness by providing evidence-based education, inclusive resources, and non-judgmental support. So we actually are a physical resource center made up of professional and paraprofessional or student staff that do a variety of things to promote health and wellness on campus. The picture you see on the slide is actually our 14 peer educators who help plan events, do presentations, help with our social media, which we'll talk about in a moment, to spread the message around the importance of health and wellness to our campus. And our campus is a large one. We are an urban Research One campus that is located right in the middle of Cincinnati, Ohio, and made up of almost 47,000 students. So we have our work cut out for us to try to make sure that our messaging gets across to as many people as possible. We have a few learning objectives for you today that we hope you walk away with. We hope you will understand how peer educators can help increase your reach on campus. You will better understand how to develop and organize your office's social media content. You will know how to utilize social media analytic tools, and you will understand best practices for effective prevention strategies. If there's anything else, like Carrie had mentioned, that you have questions about or other things that you'd like to know beyond those learning objectives, feel free to let us know at the end, and we'd be happy to address that. So a little bit about our peer educators. So I mentioned we have 14 right now, paid peer educators that we really use to make sure that we are keeping our messaging student-centered, that we're able to have the capacity to try to reach as many students on our campus as possible with our messaging. And so they're vital to everything that we do. We also know it's not just people power we need, it's intentional that these are students helping influence students. We know that research has showed that peer educators are effective at delivering information, specifically health and wellness information, to their peers. And so we very much leverage their talents and skills to make sure that we're able to start seeing, at least planting some seeds for students about their health and wellness and some behavior change there as well. We acknowledge, though, that not everyone can pay their peer educators, and so we want you to know that this is possible and is actually done at a lot of student wellness centers across the nation through volunteer work or offering students potentially college credit for their work with the centers. So we are very fortunate to have in our budget the possibility and the ability, I should say, to pay our peer educators. We do pay the minimum wage in the state of Ohio, but if you can't do that, and you're looking for assistance with your marketing or your social media, maybe looking into volunteer programs or potentially collaborating with campus partners through different academic programs to help students get college credit for their participation. I'll also say that, having peer educators help with your marketing or social media is so important because they're on the pulse of what students think is cool. They know what's on trend. They know what's out of date that maybe you think is not out of date. And so there's so many reasons why having peer educators can be helpful to your program, and we can't encourage it enough. So as I mentioned, one of the main ways that we try to get our message across to lots of students on our campus is by using social media. The Student Wellness specifically uses, right now, we have a Facebook platform, Twitter, and Instagram. We are in talks potentially of expanding that, but right now those are our three core platforms that we use. We recognize that each of those platforms are used differently, and the reason not all students are actually utilizing all three. And so we strategically have more than one platform so that we can try to reach different students. Some might like Instagram, some might like Twitter more. We still do use Facebook. We actually found that many of our international students use Facebook, and it's a popular platform for them. In addition to some families and parents use Facebook as well, we're seeing at higher numbers. So we certainly do customize our messaging a little bit different for Facebook, but we still use that platform for sure. And so you might do some research on your campus and asking your students about what are the most popular platforms to use if you're not sure where to begin, or if maybe you should roll off and stop using one that you currently are using.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Laura. I'll just jump in and say that we had some conversations about really cutting back on our use of Facebook because a lot of the students in our office said that they don't use it. But then I happened to have a conversation with somebody in the international office, like Lori said, who mentioned that a lot of international students use that depending on their country of origin, that may be the only, platform that they're able to access. So that really caused us to shift gears and say, okay, we need to keep utilizing this. We may use it in different ways. Like Lori said, we may not post as often, but I think talking to your students and talking to like other offices on campus to see, what they're using or what they're hearing students use can be really helpful.
Thanks so much, Brandy. Yeah, great points. We also have noticed, and I think I've been on a couple additional webinars about social media, that I think this is a trend across the nation, is if you're going to use Instagram, which we do, there seems to be an increased popularity in using stories on Instagram or even reels on Instagram instead of just posting traditional posts. And so even within each platform, there's these opportunities to try to reach more students or try to appeal to them depending on what is popular at the time. I think COVID has changed a lot about how students access and digest virtual media. They've been spread pretty thin, taking classes online and whatnot, and having to do family gatherings online. And so when it comes to social media, although it's still very popular, they're looking for some bite-sized pieces, some things that are quick and engaging, where they don't have to stop and process a lot because they're processing all day in that digital platform and that digital medium. So just some things to consider that we've noticed. Of course, that second bullet point involves students. I've already talked about how we involve our peer educators in the social media process. I can go into a little bit more detail about that, and I think Brandy will a little bit later, but we actually really do look for them to tell us what is popular, to tell us how to word even our post or what kind of phrasing we should use. And as I said, she'll go into, we even let our peer educators pick different social media, or I shouldn't say different wellness topics that they'll be posting about so that they don't burn out. They get to have some agency on what they're going to be talking about on social media for the semester, because even millennial students, even Gen Z students that we have coming up, social media, too much of it can be exhausting and they can burn out from that. And that's one of the ways, or one of the lessons we learned in the last year, is we had students tell us that we were actually posting too much on some of our platforms, that we were clogging their feeds with all this information. And so we thought more is better, but it actually made some people decide they didn't want to follow us anymore or mute us. And so if we didn't have our peer educators ear to the ground of what students are saying, we wouldn't have known that. And so we've definitely decided to kind of change up our pacing of how often we push things out. And as I said, Brandy will go into that detail a little bit later. We do use hashtags for our social media posts. For us specifically, we create different hashtags based off different wellness topics. And in a moment, I'll go into more detail about that. But it's a great way for you to track what you're posting about, analyze what you're posting about, and also see what other people are saying about events that you might be hosting or programs that you might have. I think one of our biggest champions of our social media initiatives, the Student Wellness Center, our setup or process for it is using scheduling software to ease the way, or the I don't want to call it a burden, to ease the load that we have when it comes to getting all of our information out. And we actually use a software called Buffer. We do have to pay a fee for that, an annual fee, but it really does allow us to not have to worry about scheduling all of these posts the day of an event. We can actually pre-schedule them, put them in a calendar that it automatically kicks these posts out. And just for a capacity concern, that really alleviates a lot of that stress of, oh, today's an event, I have to make sure we send out reminders, or next week is this awareness week, we have to make sure that we are posting about it. You can do it ahead of time when maybe you have more time to do it. It also allows, we actually ask our peer educators to post 2 weeks ahead, connected to their specific wellness hashtags they talk about. And so it allows me to go in and, before anything goes live, check that links aren't dead, check that content is appropriate, check that everything has been captioned to make sure it's easy to read for screen readers. And so Buffer has really been, I think, a saving grace for us to allow us to do and produce as much content as we have. And of course, it's always helpful when we tag other offices and people. There's power in numbers. And so if you know folks on your campus, offices, organizations that are quite popular and have a big following, tagging them in your own events or presentations or programs can be really, really helpful, because it brings in their audience too. And so don't underestimate the power of tagging other offices and encouraging them to do the same for you. And of course, analyzing either formal or informal analysis of your posts can be really helpful mid-year, end of the year, or even on a weekly basis, depending on how serious you are about seeing some of these numbers or seeing how you're doing, can be really powerful. It also, we found, when we go in and analyze, and just simple things like, for our peer educators, who had the most likes in their posts last week, or who had the most retweets, they feel really proud when we take a moment at a staff meeting and talk about what seemed to be very popular and what didn't get as much attention or engagement, and why might that be. So that can help them and us kind of a better sense and pulse on what students are looking for and how well our posts are doing.
Yeah, I felt like they became really kind of competitive with each other to see like who could have the more popular posts. So that might be sort of a fun way to maybe build some competition among your students.
So I just wanted to go through an example of a campaign, a hashtag campaign that we did a few years ago around a specific gender-based violence prevention topic. We were promoting Denim Day. And for those who don't know, Denim Day is I'm trying to think of how to describe it, an awareness day of action, encouraging folks to wear denim as a symbol to stop victim blaming. Typically it happens in April. It's a kind of a worldwide observed day to educate others about gender-based violence, sexual violence, and also it's a visual representation of people's solidarity to stop victim blaming. So we used hashtag DenimDayUC on our social media to try to drum up attention and awareness about upcoming events during Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and specifically about Denim Day. So as I said before, hashtags are how people connect their social media with a common message. And the first thing I want you to consider when you're making a hashtag is to search that you don't see that hashtag anywhere else if you want it to be unique, or search that it's other places, like Denim Day UC is specific to UC, but just hashtag Denim Day could be used worldwide. So when people are searching Denim Day, we might have hits and pick up some of those folks, but we're also making it specific so that UC feels a sense of community with this specific hashtag. It also allows us to see, and you'll see in a moment, we'll proceed through some slides. It helps people get engaged, especially when you combine a hashtag with an action item. Like if we're saying, use this hashtag and take a picture, it gets a lot more, has a lot more power and influence behind it, and it gives people something to do with this information. So Neville Pinto is actually the president of UC, and so it was a big deal for us. We had mentioned before, UC is a big campus. He has a lot of competing things that came for his attention, and so for him to actually tweet, what are you wearing for Denim Day tomorrow? That was a big deal. And when we are tagging that U of Cincy, that is their Cincinnati's official Twitter page, that's bringing a lot of more viewership in. And now that he said something, we're going to get a lot more buzz about it too. And so, Brandy, if you don't mind, we'll go ahead and flip through here. So we have president tweeting about it using the hashtag. We have students. We're promoting these buttons that they can pick up with the Denim Day hashtag on it and logo. I think we have other staff members. So this is something that, these are our peer educators here showing some of our resource cards that we have. But this is beyond just, I know when we think about social media, it's just for students, but we have faculty and staff who are also engaging with this messaging, which can be so much more powerful for a holistic backing, a more powerful whole campus support of this hashtag. So here we have some staff members over at one of our regional campuses. And so this is, and then our VP of Student Affairs here. So, something that can sometimes happen is we put some stuff out on social media and we don't tag the right people, or we don't add that engagement piece where we're encouraging someone to do something with what we're putting out there. It kind of just falls flat. But this was one of those situations where we really did rally around our division. We're in the Division of Student Affairs here at UC. And then because of the people that were posting, like our Dean of Students here, Juan Guardia, he has some influence, right? And so when he says something on social media, people are listening and willing to reshare or retweet. And so we just wanted to show you this example. And I'll also say we try to use the hashtag during events as well. And so at an event, you're using it so people can, see what's going on campus, get people to the location where we might be hosting a tabling or a pop-up event or a speaker. So we definitely use it during an event, and then of course analyzing afterwards. So here you see a screenshot from a website called Tweet Reach. That's really hard for me to say, Tweet Reach. But we use that to help analyze how did our campaign go. And this particular website only allows you to get a few free reports. So it's really one of those things that you'll want to focus on for, larger scale campaigns that you might be doing through the year. But it can show you some great analytics and very digestible pie charts, as you can see, to have a better sense of how did we do? What could we do better next time? What should we celebrate? What do we tell our student workers about so that they can improve their social media efforts in the future? And so just some things to consider. I should say, and I would have said at the beginning, but I forgot, that we are not the be all end all knowers of all things social media. This has just been what worked for us, and some considerations that we make when we really want to get our messaging out, particularly around a specific campaign or topic or event that's coming up. These have been some helpful tips for us. Brandy, would you add anything at this point regarding how we've used hashtags for events?
I'll just add that one of the things that we learned probably in the last couple years is how to make hashtags more accessible, that it's important to capitalize each word, which may look sort of weird, but that helps people who may be using a screen reader or other sort of technology to help them, with accessibility on sites. So we've tried really hard to make sure that, that we capitalize like the each D in denim day instead of using all lowercase.
Yeah, I would encourage you. I don't know your campuses or in your organizations, if you do have someone who specializes in accessibility, we've been lucky to have a wonderful office on campus, our accessibility resources office, which we've had some consultation with them, and even on campus we have a whole day dedicated to digital accessibility, a whole day of workshops on these, how to make your social media, how to make your websites more accessible. And so if you have anything like that, I encourage you to access those resources, because it can help make what we're doing more inclusive.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd add that isn't necessarily about hashtags, but in terms of analysis, that you can do some analysis in, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram itself. And then depending on if you use like a scheduling software, there may be some analysis built in with that as well. So, don't feel like you have to use a separate website or that you have to pay for something to go into like really in-depth analysis. You can do that on the platforms that you use.
Great point.
Okay, so went too far. No, there we go. So speaking of the scheduling software, Lori had mentioned that. So we have our peer educators make our social media, and so that we try to streamline it and make it a little bit more organized, we do it by topic. So each semester, a student can select the topic that they want to do. This is a little bit older. You can see this is our schedule or our topic list from 2018, but it hasn't changed too much. We do have some additional topics. As we get more peer educators, we find we have to add some more topics. So we get pretty creative in what we do. And then each topic has its own hashtag that all have UC in them, because like Lori said, you want to make it campus specific. Like if we just did hashtag wellness, there could be millions of posts that use hashtag wellness, and our post would get sort of lost in that. But if we do hashtag UC wellness, then it makes it easier for us to find, it makes it easier for our students to find, and it might pull up a little bit easier as well. We have certain requirements in terms of how many posts they have to do, and that usually changes every year as we learn new things. So for example, we didn't used to post a whole lot on Instagram. We tried to really only use Instagram for like live events or in-person events. But as Instagram became more popular, we realized, we needed to post to that more often. And so we, asked our peer educators to post to Instagram more often. But we also know that on a site like Instagram, you should really only have about one post a day, at least according to what our students say. You can have more stories, but our students say they don't want to be inundated with posts. So we try to only have about one post a day per Instagram. Twitter, you have a little bit more flexibility. People are used to seeing lots of tweets come through, so we can post a little bit more on, on Twitter a little bit more often. But to Lori's point, we have cut back in the past, or we have cut back recently because we've gotten feedback that was just too many, especially with, 10 students making X number of tweets or posts every week, like that can be a lot. So we try to really mix it up. And then like Lori said, we've put together this posting schedule just to help to keep our students on track in terms of when they should be making posts. And we give about a 2-week buffer so that we have time to review the posts before they go out and to make any edits. We do this just as sort of a fail-safe for us, because we do think it's really important for our students to be able to make this content. Like Lori said, they're way cooler than us. So like they know what's happening. They know what is popular on social media. Like I like to give the example, this has been a few years ago, but you may remember this. There was this like thing going around with that cartoon Arthur, with Arthur's fist. And I was like, what is this? I don't understand this. Like, what is this big deal about his fist? But like, it was everywhere and the students knew exactly how to use it. And apparently it was very clever, what they did, and people really liked it. So I will defer to them because I just was like, I don't understand this. So we think it's really important to prioritize that. And so we want to make sure that we can do it in a way that the student affairs, marketing, and communications person will support. So we say, we review all of the posts before they go out, both for spelling and grammar and those sorts of things, but also just to make sure that it's in line with, the messaging that we put out as an institution. And then we go in as staff and just review them. Then the other nice thing about having a physical schedule like this is that it encourages the students to kind of think ahead and think, okay, so, Halloween is coming up in a couple of weeks. What are some posts that I can make about Halloween? Or, whatever the specific topic may be that it encourages them to kind of have a schedule in front of them so they can think ahead and make posts accordingly. I want to talk a little bit about Buffer. This is the particular platform that we use for our scheduling software. There are others out there like Hootsuite. And I'm blanking on what some of the other ones are, but there are a lot that are out there. Some are free. Some, like you may be able to do a certain number of posts for free. And then if you want to do more posts, you can pay for it. Because of the amount of posts that we do, we pay for the software, but again, you don't have to. You just have a certain amount that you would be able to post. But like I said, you can still use it for free. So Buffer allows us to schedule our posts, which is great for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not staying up until 11 o'clock or midnight or 1 a.m. or whatever it might be to put posts out at a time where students are going to read them. And so this allows us to reach students at all hours of the day. And then it also allows us to really align our posts based on when we think students are going to be reading them. So you can set really specific times. I mean, you can have it go out, and I think this first one will show, like, you could have it go out at 11:31 p.m. Like, you can get really specific with the time. And so we will, have changed these at times. We try to align them based on when we think students are going to be looking at social media. So we try not to do a whole lot in the morning because we know that students might not be up early, especially on the weekends. And in the past, we've set it up to align with class change. So, we know that about 5 minutes before classes start, students are going to be on their phone in the classroom waiting for class to start. So we would have tweets go out then and posts go out then. So they'd be right there at the top of their feed while they're waiting for class to start. We try to do some, like I said, later in the evening because we know students are going to be awake, particularly if there are really important things we want them to know, or maybe some reminders or things that we want them to know that, for later in the evening, whether it's about, hey, don't forget to, check in on your friends, make sure they're doing okay at the party, whatever it might be, because, students are looking at their phones, all the time. I mean, not just students, everybody is. So this allows us to get really specific about when the posts go out. It also allows us to spread them out throughout the day. If I were the person who had to post and I had to go in and post them live, then it would just be like 20 posts, like all right, one after another. And that can get really annoying. So spreading them out throughout the day, makes it so that people aren't seeing our posts one right after the other, in one sitting. Our students, they can see this. So when, Buffer looks a little bit different than this picture shows, but it's the same idea. You can see when posts are scheduled, you can see what the post is. So we also ask our students for them to mix it up. Like, we don't want all of our nutrition posts to go out at 11 a.m. Like, we want to mix them up. We don't want all of our nutrition posts to go out one right after the other. So we really encourage them to mix them up. And we have all of our accounts linked. So we have Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook linked. And then we also, because we're able to purchase this resource, we actually partner with other offices who don't have that same ability. I forget how many accounts you can have linked. I think it's maybe up to 10 accounts that you can have linked. So we have other offices that have accounts that are linked, and then they can go in and schedule their own posts. So that could be an option as well. If funding is maybe limited for your office, you could maybe sort of cost share and share the expense with other offices. We just tell our students to make sure, that they really pay attention and post in the right area. But we haven't had any issues with that. Our students are pretty adept at using this, and then we do a training with them as well. And then here is, this looks a little bit busy, but you can see what we looked at previously was sort of a shorter version, like a condensed version of one day. This is what an entire week may look like, that you can really see when all these posts go out, and you can see they're incredibly random times, like 8:02 a.m. Like I said, we try not to post a whole lot that early. At 9:59 a.m. because if I remember correctly, I think we had a class that started at 10. So you can get really specific, and then you can set them for different days. You could set them to go out at 12:52, for all days. So you can get really detailed with buffer, which is nice. So shifting gears a little bit to talk about some effective prevention programs. I don't want to go into this in a whole lot of detail because I think it's stuff that we know, but I think it's always really helpful to get those reminders. We want to make sure that we are, following and utilizing effective programming or prevention strategies to really ensure that what we're doing, it works, that it's found to work. And that's also going to give us the most bang for our buck. If we're using strategies that we know are going to be effective, then that will ensure that our messaging is received, that it may change our attitudes and behaviors and skills and those sorts of things, as opposed to just like kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. We want to make sure that what we're doing is effective. And there are some resources available that schools can utilize to help to find programs that are effective. The CDC has some evidence-based strategies at reducing gender-based violence. I put the link here. Oh, I put the link there, but you can also search for this if you search CDC Stop SV. That, of course, is an acronym because the federal government loves acronyms. And it kind of goes through what an effective gender-based violence program should look like. What are the components that should be there? And then also on the website, they provide some links for some programs that have been found to be effective. Certainly, some of those programs you may cost money and you may have to purchase, but you can make homegrown strategies that while you may not have done, a really intense evaluation and assessment of that program, if you follow theory, if you follow, these guidelines, then it will help to ensure that at least what you're doing is effective. So again, you're not doing things that have found to be, unhelpful at reducing or preventing gender-based violence. Another website is NASPA's Culture of Respect. The nice thing about this is they have sort of like a resource of different programs, or not a resource, a matrix of different programs. So if you're trying to decide as an institution what you may want to utilize, where you may want to spend your money, then this matrix is going to be really helpful. I don't think all of the programs on this matrix cost money, so I would encourage you to check that out and see what is available. But like I said, it's just another tool to help to find what's already available. Another strategy is to do targeted prevention by high-risk events. So we try to, focus on and think about, when do we see the most incidences of gender-based violence happening? When do more reports come in? We know that reports and incidents don't always align. But one of the things that we've talked about is, okay, we know that we tend to get a lot of reports at this period. So, maybe we need to promote our reporting resources like leading up to that, or, in the months before that, so that students know, they can report at any time and what the reporting resources are. An example might be, we know that within those first 6 weeks or so of each, semester, that tends to be a high risk time for gender-based violence. And so we try to do some really targeted prevention during those first 6 weeks. We try to really make sure students know about their resources, what their reporting options are, that they know, where to go on campus if they were to experience gender-based violence. There's been research in the last couple of years that have shown that home football games or home athletic events may be a high risk time for gender-based violence. So that may be another strategy that you use on campus. So you can do some research to see, either what does your campus look like specifically, or at the very least, sort of what does the national data show, and then try to time that, either during that event or maybe even right before that event, so you can get that messaging out there to hopefully prevent, incidences of gender-based violence from happening, in the first place during those events. Lori, anything you would add to this?
No, I don't think so. I think, having you all here and being involved on listservs, such as this one, and on national and local scales, it's just another way to benchmark how other people are doing effective programming as well. So that's all I would say, is that, look to your colleagues at other institutions to assist you as well.
Yeah, so we work with our Office of Gender Equity and Inclusion, or our Title IX office, to tell us, like, when are they seeing reports. They have that data on, when incidences may be more likely to happen, or when they see a lot of incidents happen. And so we work with them to sort of then strategize what we're going to do from a prevention standpoint. Talking a little bit about some events on a budget. I know budgets are always tight, and I think especially, with COVID, schools are seeing, budgets cut. And so always being mindful of, how do we make the most of the resources that we have? I think it's really important to, again, really to talk to students and see what they want. I think we make a lot of assumptions about what students want, like that students want food or students want a giveaway, and they may not. Students may still be willing to come to an event and attend a program without having to get some sort of an incentive. I think especially for students who are really engaged with the topic, they may be willing to come. And of course, those might not be the students that we know that we need to reach. If students are already passionate about this topic, we're sort of preaching to the choir, but it is still important for them to be there and get involved, and maybe they would bring a friend with them. So really talk to students to see, what may draw them in. And if students do like items, if students feel like, or if you still feel like students need to walk away with something, could it be done at a lower scale? Like stickers can be relatively inexpensive, and students love to put stickers on their water bottles and their laptop cases. So maybe instead of giving them something more expensive, you could give them a sticker, that then, shows off that they attended this event, or that they got certified in this, or, that they went through the bystander intervention training and now they're, bystander certified, or whatever it might be. So I think, sort of thinking creatively about what that incentive might look like, and talking to students about what might draw them in. We just had a conversation this morning, Lori and I did, about, do we provide certificates to students who go through our bystander intervention training? Because students love to have stuff like that they can put on a resume, and that shows, a paper certificate shows like they're really official, and that might be enough to get students to come. Explore grant funding, which, I know, depending on what's happening, it may or may not be there, and certainly takes time and resources. But it can really help, I think, if there are events that you want to do, like programs or interventions that you want to do, and the funding might not be available. on your campus to find some grants, whether that's at the federal level, whether that's on the state or local level. There are not just grants like through gender-based violence specific organizations, but there may be other organizations that are more like college health and wellness specific. I'm thinking about NASPA, for example, and the American College Health Association. I know ACHA has grant funding, and I don't know that it's topic specific. I think it says things like, you know, an innovative program that you can implement on your campus. And so the topic is very broad. So again, maybe even thinking outside the box for grant funding that you can use, and maybe partnering with other organizations. Like if you know that you want to work with athletes, you know, maybe there are athletic organizations that you can apply for grant funding through. So really kind of thinking creatively and outside the box. Partnering with student organizations is another way that you can, you know, kind of guarantee student attendance and do events, you know, that get you some return on your investment. I know it can be challenging to like want to, you know, you plan this event and you put money in this event and, you know, if only a few people come. But if you partner with a student organization, maybe to plan the event, to do a presentation specific for that audience and for that group, then that can ensure student attendance. In the past, we've done some presentations, for example, with some really specific organizations. Like we have a group called Man Cave, which is through our African American Cultural and Resource Center. So it's a group that's sort of focused on like the development and, you know, sort of engagement of Black men on campus. And so we've done some events specifically with that group, or done some presentations or workshops specifically with that group. And we go to their meetings. We know they're going to be there, that, you know, it's an audience that, you know, is already in a group, you know, like I said, it's their meetings, their weekly or biweekly meetings. So we know students are going to be there. In the past, like, you know, at other institutions that I've worked at, when we've created new programs and we want to sort of pilot it, we've worked with residence halls the residence halls where we know there are a lot of students who live, that we know that RAs are really engaged and will encourage students to come. So then that way we know people will be there and we don't feel like we're just, you know, talking to 2 or 3 people. And then also thinking about some of the partnerships on campus, you know, are there offices that have funding that would be willing to partner with you? But also not just like monetary funding. Are there other resources that they could provide for you? Could the bookstore provide some giveaways for an event that you have? You know, even something as simple as like, you know, when we've done events or when other organizations on campus have done events, the bookstore is willing to give bags so that you can put the information and resources in. So even something as simple as that. We, during Welcome Week, asked our dining services for water, you know, because they get so many bottles of water that they're able to distribute to other offices on campus. And so they were able to provide that for us. So then we could pass that out to students at our late night Welcome Week events to help, you know, to make sure that they were, you know, hydrated. So that might be some other strategies that you can explore. You know, I know that, you know, funds may be tight across campus. So like I said, sort of thinking about some of the other things that people may be able to provide for you, you know, to help you to kind of cut costs a little bit. Some other ideas for, you know, marketing your events and, you know, just sort of getting messages out, partnering with faculty. We have a program that we do, or initiative that we do, called Don't Cancel That Class. And so usually like a couple weeks before the semester starts, as you know, faculty are making their syllabi, we email faculty. We have a list of faculty. That was one of the things we had a peer educator do, was go through and say, okay, find these departments that may have an interest in, you know, wellness topics or gender-based violence topics, and find all the faculty emails. And so we create this running spreadsheet and we email them and say, hey, if you know that you are going to be going to a conference this semester, instead of canceling class, have us come in and present to your class. You know, depending, the faculty may or may not be out right now because, you know, with travel because of you know, COVID or other things, but they may still need people to come in, you know, especially if, you know, they have to be out for some reason. Instead of canceling class altogether, you could present to their class. You could also present to specific, classes, like reach out to, courses that would be really interested in gender-based violence prevention. Email those professors and say, hey, can we come in? Can you build this into your class? Even if you're going to be there, can you build this into your class and have us come in and present? Or also thinking outside the box, could your class help us with a project that we want to do? We want to create this new program on campus, and reaching out to a class to help to create that program or evaluate that program or market that program. In terms of messaging and awareness on campus, we try to use like technology and other resources. So we have a lot of like TVs and electronic billboards and things throughout campus. And so we send flyers for upcoming events or even just important messages that we want students to know. We send those to, to put on those televisions. And a lot of them are in really, kind of high trafficked areas. So there are televisions in the lobbies of all of the residence halls, in the dining halls. So like above where the different like stations are, they'll have the menu, but then the menu might also like kind of switch off and then show a particular message or the flyer that we're showing. They're also in, I think, the rec center. They're in our like main student center. So they're all over campus and are a really great way to just sort of in passing, it's a pretty passive way to do it, but we know that people need to hear a message or see a message multiple times for it to really sink in. So that can be a way to, to really take advantage of the resources and things on campus. And then also asking students, I know we've talked about this a lot, but it can't be understated. We've done surveys of students to ask how they hear about our services, how they hear about, particular messages that we put out. And we actually found that a lot of students, we put like the flyers and things, both the paper flyers and the electronic flyers that we put out, students see those and pay attention to them. I think that we assume that they don't pay attention, but they do. And so we realized like we need to continue to do those flyers around campus to get students' attention. Word of mouth is also, we have found to be a really effective strategy. And so that's another great reason to have peer educators, is to encourage them to share information at their student organization meetings and their classes, tell their peers about things that are coming up. So, of asking your students, whether formally or informally, how they hear about your services and how they hear about messages could be helpful. So it could be an actual survey that you send out. It may also be a poll that you do on social media, that says, hey, how do you hear about events? And then that's just a quick way for them to engage with your office and with your social media and then give some feedback. Are there any questions for Lori or me?
There are none currently in the chat room. Just want to encourage folks that you can, if you do have a question, you can enter it in the chat room. This is also the end of the presentation. So you do have the ability to unmute yourself if you're on the web application and just ask a question directly of our presenters today. So I would encourage you to ask questions at this time.
You're also welcome to email us if you think of questions after the fact. We're happy to share, what we know. Like Lori said, we're definitely not experts, but we're happy to share what we do at UC.
I did think of one other tip while we're waiting for people to think of questions. One thing I noticed with our new group of peer educators this year is that is to watch your assumptions about how, although all of our students are traditionally aged 18 to 24, not all of them use social media the same way. And some of them are more engaged with it than others. And I was kind of surprised that some of them, when we talked, some of them picked up really quickly about like, okay, I know what I want to post and I know what I want my voice to be in the post. And some were like, I have no idea what to write. how do I use this? And so don't make assumptions that all of your Gen Z students know how to use Instagram or Twitter or any of the social media platforms. And so, hold back from making those assumptions, and give some time, if you are working with student workers, to give them some good examples to look at, to really celebrate their tries at making some of their first posts. Because I made assumptions that, everybody's online and everybody's on social media, so they'll be able to jump in and do it. And that's not necessarily the case.
Great tip, Lori. Seeing no questions come in, and I know the hardest part is always being comfortable with silence, right? Facilitation 101, be comfortable with silence, but it's the hardest one, I feel like. I'm just going to reinforce that they have shared an email address, or they have also graciously volunteered to answer questions, as maybe you take some of what they've shared today and go to apply it on your campus. If you have any questions for them. Thank you so much, Brandy and Lori, for not only your time today, but for being willing to do that, and for the work that you're doing at UC. So appreciate you, and thank you again. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Carrie, we just got a question in the chat.
We did.
Trisha wants to know, how do I get more followers on my pages? That's a great question, Trisha.
That is a good question.
Trisha, if I may ask, sometimes what can help is if you start to follow more people off of your platform, more people will follow you back. And so I don't know how many organizations or individuals that your page is currently following, but I think an easy way to start is to follow others, and they'll get that little notification that you're asking to follow, and then they might do the same in return.
We've also done in the past different kind of incentive things for people to follow. So for example, when we've had events, particularly events where you have to get something, we'll say, you need to show us that you followed us to get food or to get this prize. We've done things where, and it takes a little bit more effort, but maybe in a week period or in a couple day period, say, every time you engage with our page in some way, whether it's following us, liking us, retweeting us, you get entered into a drawing, and then every week we'll draw something. So of course those take a little bit more resources, but to Lori's point, I think following different offices is helpful. If you tag them in your posts, then I know I've done that when I've seen people tag us, then I will maybe not all the time, obviously it depends what it is, but share it to our story or retweet it so that, they'll do the same thing for us so that we can get some new followers. So those are some of the things that we have found to be effective, to help to increase engagement.
I'll also say, in a recent webinar I was in, they mentioned that more isn't always more, because if you have right now, I don't know how many platforms you have, but if you do Facebook really well, stick with Facebook. Maybe your audience doesn't need an Instagram or a Twitter page too. So if you feel like it's spreading you too thin, even with your followers or just your capacity, maybe just focusing on one platform could be helpful.
And another question that I saw come in was as people join, maybe giving them a shout out or thanking them for following. I think that works too. I think it could be maybe a lot, especially if you get a lot of followers, but everybody loves to be sort of get a shout out. Make sure obviously that you check with your folks first to see if they're okay with that, but that might be an incentive, and that's kind of a free way to do it. It obviously it doesn't cost money for you to say thank you to our new followers today, or thank you to the people who followed us this week, or whatever it might be. And we don't use LinkedIn in our office, so I don't know that I can speak much about that. I do know, personally, when I've used LinkedIn is finding those connections and liking people and connecting with people. And then, it's, kind of like I don't know, I just keep thinking like all the different connections that you can make that then they're like, oh, you're friends with this person or you have this connection in common. So so that might be helpful, is again just like kind of going out and following people and also re-sharing on your other platforms. Like we've done that too, where we've said, hey, we're on, on our Facebook page. We've said, hey, we're on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram. So you may do the same thing as sort of cross post on your different platforms to encourage people to follow you. Oh, the other thing that I'll add, I'm sorry, because I just thought of this, is thinking about the different ways that you engage with people. So it's don't just have like a bunch of language, like words, post pictures too. On Facebook and Twitter, you can post links to stories. So, we encourage our students to read the story and maybe because in one article you could make, 3 or 4 different posts. But you could also post the link, because clicking on that link is a form of engagement. And so I would say getting creative in having lots of different types of posts that you do so that people can engage with you in different ways.
Awesome. Thank you both for the other ideas and the ways that you've utilized and managed that to attract more followers. And I can see Trisha as thankful for your input and your ideas as well. So thank you so much. We are at time. So again, thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Lori. I hope the rest of your week goes well and your weekend coming up. And thanks so much again for doing this today. And thank you for joining. And we'll talk to you all later. Have a good day.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.